So, when you play 70 different instruments, but one of them is a Pac-Man guitar, how difficult is it to not play favorites?
I'm Mac Fraser,
I'm Backrolls.
and we're the Nintendo Nerds.
We're a new comedy and gaming duo here to help you craft and play your way to a better day.
We met in the not-too-distant past during some spirited online Mario Kart, and as it turns out, we share a love for art, gaming, and all things Nintendo.
And we want to share our nerdy knowledge with you.
So stick around, because in today's video, we're hosting a special segment we like to call the Nintendo Builders Corner. And we're here with our very special guest, Charlie Rosen of 8-Bit Big Band.
Charlie, it's incredible that we have you here taking some time with us. I'd like to stress to our audience how kind you are being by taking some time to talk with us today, because if you don't already know anything about Charlie, I'm not convinced he ever stops working. We're here to talk a little bit more in depth about one of Charlie's passion projects, the 8-Bit Big Band. But in addition to wrangling a team of 30 to 65 people to record albums as a side hustle, Charlie is a full-time orchestrator and musician, having cut his teeth playing in Broadway pits for musicals such as 13, Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson, and American Psycho. His most recent work even earned him a prestigious Drama Desk nomination for his orchestrations on the smash Broadway hit Be More Chill, the show that AM New York described as Little Shop of Horrors meets Dear Evan Hansen. Charlie, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us, and congratulations on another Broadway run. Be More Chill is closing in just over a week as we're here. How are you feeling about that?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, thanks for having me, first of all. And two, the nature of Broadway is that it's an ephemeral art form. No shows last forever, except for a couple, which seem to be really going for that. But the bulk of them, they have their time on Broadway, and they're live. They happen, and then they close. That's just part of the industry. I've actually never run a show that's run longer than 6 months, and I've done 10 Broadway shows, so I'm getting pretty used to it.
Wow.
That's a true gig stamina. That's a true performer.
Indeed.
That's incredible. I can't imagine how much work that must take, but it definitely, I would assume it would keep you on your toes, give you something new to do every couple of months, I guess.
Yeah, the cool thing about that is, there's a danger with Broadway shows, if you're playing them, that if they run for too long, you get a little burned out.
Mm-hmm.
But the beauty of being somebody who's both plays them and is on the creative team, and having projects after project of new musicals that maybe have shorter lives than the longer of the running Broadway shows, is that it always keeps you fresh. You're always moving to a new project, and it keeps you on your toes arranging wise. The thing that I say that I like the most about working in Broadway is that although when you look on cast albums, they're sorted as show tunes or cast album, like as a genre. In reality, musical theater is not necessarily a genre by function. It's a delivery vehicle with which you use other genres to dramatize your story. So what that means for arrangers and people on the creative team is that they're required to have a pretty big vocabulary of different genres that they can pull from. And that's the thing that I think draws me the most to working on shows.
Nice. So this kind of leads me into the first little bit that we want to talk to you about here. So before we talk about the two 8-Bit Big Band albums, the Press Start and the newly released Choose Your Character, we want to talk to you about how you became such a lifetime student of music. You've learned over 70 instruments. You grew up in a household of musicians. Was this something that your family worked hard to instill in you, or were you just taking to an interest you get your hands on? And when did you find time to fall in love with Nintendo and all of that?
Mm-hmm. My parents always told me that they never really pushed me towards it. They were happy to take a step back if I wasn't drawn to playing any instruments. But, at age 2 or 3, I was immediately drawn to all the instruments around the house. And so they just were able to nurture that. And because they're both musicians, they were sort of both my first music teachers. My mom was my first piano teacher at age 3. And my dad is sort of a jazz organist and keyboard player and loves bluegrass. And so me and him would discuss theory growing up and a lot of pop and jazz theory. But of course, being a child of the early 90s, my personal first console was the Nintendo 64 in 1996, which is like my home base console for everything and one of my big influences. But my dad also used to be really into going to garage sales. It was something we would do together on weekends. And so because of that, I bought, a Super Nintendo with a ton of games, an NES. I also got an Atari with like 80 cartridges. I never got any Sega consoles, actually, weirdly enough. But then, the PlayStation came out, and I played my friends' PlayStations. I didn't get one, but I did get a PS2. It's just sort of like a natural progression of a kid discovering video games as they were becoming the next big thing, in that sort of second wave of of video game society, I guess you could say.
Yeah, you were definitely ahead of your time scouring the yard sales for retro games. Well, and I can tell that all three of us grew up around the same time and we're playing a lot of the same video games because thematically you've chosen a lot of songs that tap into some really emotional memories for me. I mean, for me, Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo was the first video game I ever owned myself. So this aquatic ambiance track on your new album, it just gives me chills.
Yeah.
You've talked about this before, but I'd love for you to share a little bit of your thoughts on the parallels between musical theater themes and video game themes.
That's great. The thing about those two sort of art forms is that they both have, and you could say this about film scoring too, they both use music to enhance the drama of the interactivity or visual nature of what's on screen. And so the main skill to develop if you're going to be somebody who scores media, whether it be film, TV, video games, musical theater, certainly, is like a sense of storytelling and a sense of dramaturgy and a sense of understanding like what the underlying emotion is or vibe or just feeling is when you look at an image and say, oh, that needs this type of music. And the other parallel to draw from musical theater, certainly specifically, and this happened with film scoring too, is that in the heyday of musical theater, in the golden age of musical theater, these songs
On the radio.
And radio, yes, exactly. These songs became the pop songs. These were the songs that everybody knew, and they became a songbook, like a canon, a selection of materials that we as a culture say, I have emotional and in-person experiences with this music through the delivery vehicle of their visual mediums, and as such, I am connected to them in a deeper way. That was musical theater. It was also film scoring. It's why film scoring soundtracks were also such a big thing for quite a while and still are. Now, in the modern day, we have video games. We have a set of melodies, themes, anthems, songs that are connected with the experience of playing video games. And so what's kind of happening is video games are becoming a new American songbook, a new canon, a new selection of standards that all gamers know that they can appreciate now, removed from their original delivery vehicles of their games as just musical musical pieces of musical property that they appreciate listening to.
Well, because a beautiful piece of music is a beautiful piece of music regardless. And, with us having these ties, like you were talking about, to these emotions or these things that we were feeling while we were watching these movies or playing these games, they hold really true to us. I can say in all honesty, like when I walked down the aisle and I got married, I walked down the aisle to 2 Xanarkin from Final Fantasy X.
Wow, amazing. I love that.
Because I wanted a piece of beautiful piano music, and I had so much emotion tied to that. And it's funny because I had friends saying I knew that I was at the right wedding when that started to play.
Yeah, and the thing with the crossover into jazz too is that jazz musicians then took those songs that were popular from shows and movies and made them into standards and used them as jumping off points for their own creativity and expression.
You took the thought out of my mouth.
And now we're seeing a generation of young musicians using video game music for that same vehicle.
Absolutely. You and so many other people on YouTube are just doing such incredible things with reinvention too. Like songs that I wouldn't have really given a lot of time and brain space on because it's a MIDI track. Maybe I didn't. Because of that, I didn't really appreciate the complexity of the melody. And then it takes just a completely new life when you put it with brass and strings and percussion.
Right. Well, that's the amazing thing about being a ranger is that what being an arranger really is being able to listen to raw ingredients of a piece of music, its melody, its chord changes, and its rhythm, and drawing from your other vocabulary as a musician based on other music you listen to, other genres, hearing the untapped potential in those things, and figuring out what flavors you can add, what moves you can make as a musician to give it, a new context or a new life, a new genre. If you hear one melody and you say, oh, I see what they're going for, I can either run with that even farther, or I can take that and recontextualize it in a new genre because I've also heard a similar thing in this vocabulary with this harmonic language. That's the beauty of arranging.
So arranging seems like a really big task, but also putting together a team of 30 to 65 people. Yeah. Assembling that kind of talent is just amazing. How much convincing does it take to get your musician friends together to record something like the 2 albums that you've done? Do you have a lot of musician friends that had a long history with Nintendo like you have?
Some yes, some no. I mean, I'm really lucky. I just want to say that actually the total count for the amount of unique musicians that contributed to album number 2 is over 80.
Oh wow!
Oh
Isn't that crazy? Over 80. Yeah. All the musicians, and we did the sessions spread out, so it wasn't the same band every time. Therefore, over 80 musicians contributed playing or singing or soloing or something on that new album, which is insane. So to answer your question, they're just people that I've sort of, I've lived in New York for 10 years now. I've picked up along the way doing theater or jazz, or, I also have another big band that I started doing in 2012 that's local to New York that is more of a local thing called the Broadway Big Band, where I take songs from Broadway shows and I reimagine them. That served as my lab. Now doing that after 8 or 9 years, I started doing this. And so I had already kind of got a collection of musicians that I like to call upon. And so, yeah, some people join me like that. I would say that I didn't really have a foot into the video game music scene whatsoever until doing this. And so all of those people came with me along my journey strictly as a New York theater and TV arranger, as opposed to like an internet thing. So I'm now just starting to branch out and reach out to people on the internet and like dive into this like amazing scene to see what else I can do. So yeah, and convincing them was pretty easy. I mean, the thing is that I've gotten a reputation now. I'd like to think, without tooting my horn too much, that the charts that I do are good. They're fun to play. But not only that, the copy work is really good. The sheet music is clean and easy to read. I really make sure not to waste anybody's time. The sessions are really efficient and clear. And also, I've been lucky enough to have success financially in theater and TV and other things that I don't believe anybody should ever work for free. So on top of that, I pay them what's basically like a standard, recording session rate, which there's a lot of people and it gets expensive for sure, but it's something I'm passionate about. And so, it's worth it for me.
And so did you have anybody that when you, like, I know that you said you have kind of met these people as you've gone along and, you invite these people to be part of these projects. Did you make any phone calls to anybody where you said, like, this is what I'm looking to do. I want to take some video game music and I want to score it like a big band. And, anybody who came back to you and said, yes, like, I want to be a part of this because I'm a nerd or I'm a big video game head or anything.
Yeah, I've had a number of people who, again, came with me, but have now revealed themselves to also be like huge game music fans.
It's funny because it's on trend now.
Right, totally. There's
Show
like
yourselves, nerds.
Yeah, right. You're free to be. You can come out. There's a number of people that I hire for this band that also have like video game music band projects of their own. Like Max Boyko has the Video Game Collective, and Patrick Bartley has the J Music Ensemble, and he also runs like a video game jam session that happens here in New York. Let's see, who else? I mean, there's a handful that I'm now forgetting off the top of my head. Oh, Zach Zinger has, a band that plays video game music, and he also is a video game scorer. He writes music for some games, for like Monster Hunter. He's done music for that, and
wow.
Yeah, and so as I've gone, and I've needed recommendations, some people now will say, oh, have you checked out this trumpet player? He's great. He's in New York. He plays around. But also I play, Smash. It's like, oh, fantastic. Great.
Yeah. Now you can establish, like, now that we've established the nerd credibility here, let's see who else can come out of the woodwork and is not afraid to also pitch in. So what are some of the biggest hurdles you face when recording an album? And is there anything that surprised you when going into this? You said you already cut your teeth on the Broadway big band, but was there anything that was surprising to you when transitioning into video game music?
Right. So, I have a couple answers there. So the thing is I, luckily, because I've been doing big band stuff for 8 years and other recording projects, I produce a lot of albums for people, with various big and small ensembles, strings, horns, cast albums. I've just been around that studio environment a lot. So I've already, I use that as an opportunity to see the pitfalls of where recording sessions get hung up, what happens with albums, where they get stopped. And so now I make sure to go into every recording session, making sure my music is clean. I have the session all laid out, the tempo's all laid out. Everything is like as clear as it can possibly be so that we can just read it down and do it.
There's no place like a studio to personify the phrase time is money. You're trying to cut out all those little things.
Yeah, it's truly so much money. So I've learned that. As far as the actual act of arranging video game music, the one challenge that I constantly run into is that, especially with vintage and retro video game music where it was sequenced, it was MIDI or it was, 3 channels, really basic synth like NES, is that obviously no human was ever meant to play any of that stuff. So for example, if you look at the Pokemon battle music, it has this just constant notes, just always running.
I was blown away the first time I heard your group playing that. It is so fast.
It's insane. Like, they shouldn't have been able to do that. So the challenge I constantly run into is when you're playing in a band which mainly is supported by people blowing into things, it gets hard to move that stuff around so that all the notes are represented, but they don't pass out. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. I think even though they're being paid, they deserve to breathe.
They deserve to breathe at least.
Yeah. So both of the albums that you have made so far they do such a good job of taking you on dynamic highs and lows. How do you go about planning your track list for these albums, and like what goes through your head when you're choosing like tracks for a second album versus the first one? And do you go into the sophomore attempt with different intentions than you did with the first one?
Yeah, actually, the albums kind of happened organically in that the first album, I just was like, I want to start this project. Here's a bunch of video game music I already love, and I'm just going to record them first, and then we'll see if that becomes an album. And we laid down like 10 tracks, and it was pretty much there. And then after that, I was looking at the track list thinking like, this album would sound a lot more complete as a journey if I added this one or two more tunes in these genres. So it kind of happens like as a process. It's like, I want to record these tunes. Then I look at them in total and think, what would make this album flow a lot better is one more swing tune, or like one more ballad, or like one more rock tune. And so the first album, I think, I recorded the bulk of the tracks. Then I looked at them and thought, I actually, for a big band, haven't recorded that many jazz tunes on this album. And so after it was all done, we recorded that Super Mario Bros. 2, the overworld theme. That's why that one doesn't have a video, because it was added once we recorded them all, because there wasn't enough swing on this big band album, surprisingly.
Okay.
And then I wanted to end the album with sort of like a send-off, and so I arranged the Final Fantasy theme as a horn chorale. So it's like I arrange the tunes I want to arrange, then I start compiling an album. Once I have I have 9 songs, that's almost an album. Let's take a look at this. Okay, maybe I need this, this, and this, and then it becomes an album.
Amazing.
So, are you someone who plots all of this out by yourself? Do you go into your ivory tower to pore over sheet music, or are these ideas you bounce off of your fellow nerds? And I have to know whose idea it was to combine the Luigi's Mansion theme with Sing, Sing, Sing.
That was me. I'd say 90% of the charts, 100% of the charts I arrange, and 100% of them come from my brain. 90% of them were songs that I had already been familiar with and clicked into my head walking around the street or whatever. And 10% were for the Moon theme from DuckTales, for example. I didn't know that song until Sydney, who played piano. She's smart game piano. She played on the Aquatic Ambience, was like, hey, I think you should maybe take a look at this tune. It's really popular. People would love it. And then I listened and was like, oh, this is so epic. I have to do this. But any of the sort of more, like Luigi's Mansion thing is Sing, Sing, Sing. That was sort of like, actually, I have a friend named Gracie who's a singer, and she was like, I love Luigi's Mansion. I wish there was some stuff from that. And I was like, oh, that theme, those chord changes kind of sound like that tune, Bernie's tune. And just that sort of started sitting and ruminating. And then it was like, oh, let me do a sort of trad 30s version.
Oh, that can only come from the brain of someone who spent a long time around jazz, musical theater, and video games.
Correct. Yeah. So then when I heard it, I thought about the intro to it. That's kind of like boom, dun, dun, dun. I was like, oh, that kind of reminds me of the trombones from Sing, Sing, Sing. And then once that clicked in, it was like, oh, this has just finished arranging itself. I'm just going to sit down. You know what I mean?
Sometimes these things are just meant to be, I think.
Yeah.
So, speaking about Sing, 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 you're someone who wears your musical icons proudly on your sleeve, all the way from Benny Goodman and the Quincy Jones Orchestra to Electric Surf Rock. Does this feeling of play help you write more? And who are some of your biggest icons musically or otherwise?
Let's see. Feeling of play as in like being playful with arranging, that kind of thing? Yeah, it does. I mean, the muscle with which you come up with creative new arranging ideas is a muscle, and the more you flex it, the better and easier it sort of comes to you.
Amen.
You know what I mean?
Sorry
Absolutely,
to interrupt, but Stephen King has a wonderful metaphor in his book on writing, that it's like an old car that sits in your yard, that it's like it's not going to fire up the first time you try to turn it on.
That's good. I like that. It's really true. And so, it's helpful, again, as an arranger, because a lot of times you get hired to do charts where people specifically say, I need it to sound like this, I need it to sound like this. And so in flexing that as part of your work, it allows your creative brain to start making those connections on its own. For example, the Still Alive becoming the World on a String style Nelson Riddle thing. I was working on, I've been working on some demo production for The Marvelous Miss Maisel, and they really wanted the composer was like, okay, I want what was it? What a Wonderful World in the style of I've Got the World on a String, Frank Sinatra. I was like, okay. So I worked for a week or so on that, various versions. So that was just then sitting in there. It was like primed, it was ready for something in the back of my head. And then when I started thinking about, I've always wanted to do Still Alive, but I didn't just want to do a straight cover of it, because so many people do that. Somehow those two neurons just like touched each other. And it was like, aha, this melody actually works really well if you swing it, So the more you do it, the easier those random connections start to fire, and the more music you listen to, the more neurons you have to latch onto other neurons. So yeah,
that's amazing. And I also want to know about icons for you, musically, otherwise. Anybody that really stands out in your mind that you felt has had a really big impact on you?
Yeah, I mean Quincy Jones, like you said, is a big one. Nelson Riddle, the film score composers. Who else? I'm like looking at my books over here.
Honestly, I understand that that's a tough question to answer because we always have so many that when it's posed to us, it's hard to answer the question.
Henry Mancini is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I also grew up playing in rock bands, and so like I thought I was going to be. When I was in high school, I wanted to be in a rock band. I listened to a lot of classic rock, so that's in there. And then my mom was a classical musician, so the great classical composer Tchaikovsky,
Mm-hmm.
I listened to a ton of world music. I went through an Indian phase, I went through a Brazilian music phase, a Charo phase.
Video game scores, are there any, like for me, like Chrono Trigger is one that stands out to me. Are there any like front to back scores that you just love?
Yes, 100%. I mean, well, literally anything Koji Kondo does, obviously, I'm like gonna die.
Yep.
But the one, actually, a video I've been meaning to make for a long time is sort of like a dissertation on front to back how the Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time soundtrack like taught me music theory.
Oh, that would be lovely.
I'm ready.
Make
that happen for me, please.
You've got 2 viewers ready to go.
Yeah, I could literally go through that soundtrack, like track by track, and say, oh, and this one, this teaches you Lydian. Like, oh, this one has this time signature metric modulation. Oh, this one has this more abstract, like parallel harmony. This one has flat, like tritone sub. This one has modal inter. Like I could go track by track and be like, here's a gem, here's this.
You're giving me my lead in right here that your brain just never stops musically. You're someone who just is always ticking. So my question is, how do you find downtime for yourself? It seems like all the content that you're putting out there is in your off work hours, and a Broadway schedule is very full. How do you find time for video gaming in there?
It's true. I always joke about when I get bored or I procrastinate or I'm like putting off doing actual work for my career, I always start arranging video game music. It's not great. And time for myself, you squeeze in time here and there. It comes in waves. This spring was insane, and I didn't have a whole lot of time to record anything new. But luckily, I don't do everything by myself. Like I don't do my own video editing, so we do a batch of recording, and then those slowly get rolled out and get edited. And then it lines up with my work, and then things don't happen for a few months, and then I get a little bit more free. Like I become more free in July and August, so started recording again. Downtime for myself. You squeeze it in there. You have a day where you're like, this is a light day. I'm gonna try and keep this day open, and do other stuff that's not music. Go to the gym, take Japanese class, whatever it is. Lay on your floor, play video games.
Whatever feels good to you that day.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
I got one more. The time has come to finally ask you about how you got your hands on that beautiful Pac-Man guitar. We're going to include a photo of that, by the way, because it's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's a one-of-a-kind piece, as far as I know. I mean, it might not be, because here's the story. The A1 at Be More Chill, and the A1 means audio one. It's the person who is the front of house. They run the board, and they're like the sound guy, basically, right? His name is Scott Kukul, and he's an incredible handyman and also a gamer. And he one time came downstairs at Be More Chill, and he said, hey, I found this schematic online for a Pac-Man Telecaster. Would that be something you'd be into? I would make, if you paid for the parts, I'd make it for you. Like maybe you can play it in the 8-Bit Big Band. It's like, that's amazing.
Yes, and.
Yes.
Yeah, so he made it from scratch. He ordered the pickups, and he got the neck, but the body, and he wired it himself. But yeah, he cut the body from a piece of nice wood, drilled it out, dremeled it, painted it, did the whole thing. That is a totally handmade custom Telecaster. made by the sound man from Be More Chill.
Oh,
What a special piece! Like to know that whole story is behind it, rather than we just found it on the internet or something like that. Because it really is a one of a kind, something that's unique for you.
Yeah,
there's actually a prototype of the body right now. There's a thing in Broadway. There's a thing called the Broadway Flea Market where it happens once a year.
Mhm.
All the shows that sort of have opening night gifts or things that they are show related they don't want, they donate them, and then they have like a garage sale in Schubert Alley, which is in New York, and all the proceeds go to charity. So there's a prototype of a Pac-Man guitar body that's signed by me that has like a melody written on it, and it's like going to be auctioned, or it's going to be sold at the Be More Chill table. So if anybody wants an inside scoop, they can go buy it.
Oh yes.
So finally tell us what's next for the 8-Bit Big Band. I mean, you just released an album, so I guess you have some places to go perform it live, and tell us where people can connect with you online.
Well, a couple of things on that, actually. Of course, there's always our Instagram where I'm posting behind the scenes videos. There's YouTube where as soon as I get these videos done, I put them up immediately.
And I'm subscribing, so I'm watching them right away.
Both are at the Big Big Band. Like I was saying before, we now have a Discord server that has just sprung into fantastic life, which is very cool and has people talking about all sorts of things from jazz, video game music. There's a theater channel. It's really fun, and I'm on there a lot. I feel like, once again, showing my age, I'm in an AIM chat room in 2002. It's really taking me back. We had one live show, which we're going to live stream. We're looking at doing another New York show in November. And then it's not announced yet, but there's going to be something happening in October, which I can't talk about yet, but it will be a live performance of some kind. But I don't want to say because it's not confirmed. But within the next year, I hope to like really buckle down on using November in Boston as a way to show other venues that we can sell tickets. And so if everybody can just buy as many tickets as possible so that we can start our tour, that would be a dream come true. And it looks like it will probably happen within the year, but venues are all about numbers. So we just got to show that we have the fan base, we have the subscribers, and we have the ticket sales.
Well, Charlie, good luck with all the endeavors going forward. It sounds like you have a lot on the go right now. We're already really interested in what you're doing, obviously, because we wanted to have this chat with you. We've been following you on the socials, and we've been watching the videos on YouTube. We're going to make sure to include the links to all of your things below, including the Discord and Instagram. For the Press Start and Choose Your Character in the description below, the two albums that just came out from 8-Bit Big Band, make sure you let us know which one of 8-Bit Big Band's songs you can't stop listening to. And if you like this video, please make sure to click that subscribe button for more content. But again, Charlie, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks again, Charlie. And as always, we hope you leave this video ready to pick up a Pro Controller, a paintbrush, or a pen. I'm Backrolls.
And I'm Mac Fraser, and this has been the Nintendo Nerds.